Tere! Virtuaalne revolutsioon on jõudnud juba nii kaugele, et me võime küsida, kas meist on saanud homointernetikus. Tänast filmi aitab meil sisse juhatada Tartu Ülikooli meediauuringute vanemteadur Andra Siibak. Andra, filmi alguses öeldakse, et esimene suur muutus mõtlemises oli siis, kui Gutenberg leiutas trükikunsti. Ja meie oleme just selle teise suure mõtlemise muutuse etapis. Kas paanikal, et me ei mõista enam oma lapsi ja lapselapsi, sellepärast, et nad lausa tunduvad internetist toituvadki? Kas sellel on mingisugust alust?
Ma arvan, et kõik, mis tundub natuke teistmoodi, kui varemalt oleme harjunud, võibki tekitada sellist kerget hirmutunnet. Samas, ma arvan, et sellel paanikal otseselt mingisugust ratsionaalset põhjust tegelikult ei ole, sest et see, mida lapsed seal teevad, kuidas oma aega sisustavad, on paljuski see, millega nende emad ja vanaemad igapäevaselt oma aega sisustasid. Lihtsalt see uus meedium on see, mis neile võimaldab selliseid tegevusi teha ja tänu sellele uuele meediumile siis võivad lapsevanemad arvata, et nad teevad seal midagi täiesti uut ja sellist, mida nad võib-olla ka ei peaks tegema. Aga see tegelikult ei ole nii.
No, tuleviku näiteks on seal filmis toodud Lõuna-Korea, kus juba praegu peaaegu kõik inimesed on internetis, nad jäävad sellest haigeks, et nad on päevade kaupa internetis, neid viiakse haiglasse ja samas nad jäävad haigeks ka sellest, kui nad ei pääse internetti, sellepärast, et siis nad on samamoodi agressiivsed, rõhutud ja õnnetud. Millal meie nii kaugele jõuame?
No, kui vaadata seda meediakajastust, mis meil vahepeal ajakirjanduses on, siis võib tunduda ka kergelt seda moraalset paanikat, et meie lapsed on ka kõige rõhutumad ja internetist sõltuvuses. Isegi üle-euroopaline uuring EU Kids Online, selle näitel me oleme koos Rumeenia lastega kõige nii-öelda internetist sõltuvamad.
Rumeenia lastega just?
Rumeenia lastega. Et meil siis sellel Eesti küsitlusel enam kui 50% või vist täpselt oligi 50% nendest lastest, kes küsitlusele vastas, siis mingisugustes aspektides tunnistas, et neil võiks olla selline asi nagu internetisõltuvus. Kuid tegelikult on internetisõltuvust äärmiselt keeruline mõõta ja hinnata ja tegelikult sellist ühtset definitsiooni ja arusaamist, et milline käitumine, kui palju ma pean seal internetis olema, missuguseid asju ma pean seal internetis tegema selleks, et ma saaksin selle internetisõltlase sildi endale külge. Sellist asja ei ole teadlased suutnud tegelikult veel omavahel selgeks vaielda.
Filmis käibki üks vaidlus. Üks pool väidab, et internet muudab meie lapsed justkui rumalamaks, et me muutume vähem mõtlemisvõimeliseks. Ja teine pool ütleb, et ei, hoopis vastupidi, internet muudab meie lapsed intelligentsemaks. Kumba seisukohta teie pooldate?
Seda ongi raske hinnata, sellepärast, et seal on nii palju plusse ja miinuseid mõlemale osapoolele. Üks asi, mis on selgelt tegelikult näha, on see, et lastele meeldib läbi interneti õppida. Ja ka meie uuringud, mis me oleme teinud, siis õpetajate tagasiside on äärmiselt positiivne olnud sellele, kui nad kasutavad interneti erinevaid allikaid õppetöös.
Suur aitäh, Andra Siibak, filmi sisse juhatamast. Ja lõpetame ikkagi sellises lootuses, et internet on midagi, mis teeb meid ja meie elu paremaks.
It's been 20 years since the World Wide Web was created, and every aspect of our lives has been touched by this digital revolution.
Tim Berners-Lee is someone who invented something of unbelievable power.
I think the web has humanity connected.
Human civilization as a whole is now witnessing the connection of people everywhere on Earth through this web.
Kuid millised on tagajärjed, mis uus erakordne ligipääs informatsioonile ja kohene ühendus veebiga kaasa on toonud? Vähesed on peatanud ja järele mõelnud, mida veeb meiega teeb. Milline on selle mõju meie suhetele? Kas veeb võib muuta isegi meie mõttelaadi?
Whether we realize it or not, through the web, we are all participating in an extraordinary and unprecedented experiment for humankind, the outcome of which is far from certain.
It's a world that has no consequences. It's a world dominated by senses. So why do you need cognition? Why do you need meaning? Why do you need metaphor?
Is it going to bring us a different, better life, or is it going to bring us a different style of communication? That's, I ask that question, I don't have the answer.
Meile teeb muret, et meie lapsed võtavad omaks pealiskaudse internetikultuuri. On see hea või halb, kui homo sapiensis saab uus liik homo interneticus?
A lot of this is a kind of middle-aged, middle-class panic about the web. They're panicked by the future. They're panicked by what they think children are doing.
I'm going to plunge into the fear and the hype to find out whether the web really is trivializing our relationships and rotting our brains. At its heart, this is about what makes us us, and whether the web distorts or enriches our very humanity. This is the Gutenberg Bible, the printed manuscript that revolutionized society by taking information from the few and giving it to the many. This book irrevocably transformed Western civilization.
When Gutenberg invented the printing press, few of his contemporaries could have predicted the consequences. They thought it was just about churning out a lot of books. But the new media, the printed word, unshackled people from old ways of thinking and fueled the Renaissance. 500 years on, the web seems to be another great leap forward in how we think.
Its characteristics mimic some of those in the ecosystem of the printing press, in that the entry barriers for individuals are extremely low. And the role of ideas, knowledge, information is central.
It makes it much easier for information to be distributed much more quickly and to be copied much more easily, which the printing press did. But it's fundamentally different in that it also makes it possible for anyone to create information. So I think it's probably even more important than the printing press.
Vaid 20 aastaga oleme näinud, kuidas veeb on muutunud meie väljapoole pööratud elu peaaegu iga tahku. Sellel on tohutu mõju kultuurile, poliitikale ja ärile. Kuid me alles hakkame mõistma selle sügavamat toimet meie psüühikale. Esimesena tuleb vastust otsida paigast, kus inimesed kasutavad veebi rohkem kui kusagil mujal maailmas.
If we are to see the web's revolutionary effects on human beings, then we should find them here. This is the most wired nation on Earth, South Korea.
Sellel digitaalselt väga arenenud maal pääseb veebi sõna otseses mõttes kõikjal. Lõuna-Korea kiudoptiliste kaablite ühendusel on allalaadimiskiirus 10 korda suurem kui Briti lairibaühendusel. 62% Lõuna-Korea 3–5 aastastest lastest kasutavad internetti regulaarselt, veetes seal igal nädalal üle 8 tunni. Analüüsid näitavad, et seda on ligikaudu 2 korda rohkem kui Briti 5-aastaste puhul.
It's the young people that the South Koreans are most concerned about. Sped into the digital age and surrounded by high tech since they've been in nappies, they command the headlines for all the wrong reasons.
Internetisõltuvus teeb korealastele üha enam muret. Nende ametlikest arvudest ilmeb, et see on nakatanud 210 000 last, kellest paljud veedavad internetis üle 18 tunni iga päev. 80% sõltlastest vajavad ravimeid. 20% on tulnud hospitaliseerida. Alex Krotowski läheb kohtuma härra Kooga, kes on selle üha kasvava probleemi alal valitsuse nõunik.
What are the symptoms of internet addiction?
그러고 난 뒤에 인터넷을 사용하지 않을 때 불안, 초조, 충분한 만족감을 얻지 못하고 친구들 사이에서 따돌리게 되고 부모, 가족 간에 있어서 인터넷 사용으로 인해서 갈등이 계속 증가되는 그런 상태를 인터넷 중독이라고 이야기를 할 수 있고 본인이 굉장히 몇 시간씩, 17시간, 8시간씩 인터넷을 계속 하다가
Korea võib näida äärmusliku juhtumina, kuid näitab, et interneti toimet meie psüühikale ei saa tähelepanuta jätta. Ning see annab ühtlasi aimu, milliseks võib kujuneda ka meie tulevik.
우리 한국이 경험하고 있는 인터넷 중독이라고 하는 이런 경험들이 저는 다른 나라에서도 조만간에 3년 내지 5년 후에 경험하게 될 당신네들 나라의 미래다라고 저는 생각하고 있고
Hirm tulevaste põlvede pärast on juba maad võtnud ka väljaspool Lõuna-Koread. Suurbritannias on suurim skeptik neuroloog Susan Greenfield. Ta on väljendanud väsimatult muret selle üle, et veeb võib moonutada laste reaalsuse taju.
When a child is in the real world, even if it's a real world of a doll's house, this is a world where your doll might break. Someone might stamp on your toy soldier. So you're learning that actions have consequences. So imagine you're a young person on a computer. It is a world where there's a strong premium on hearing and vision, on strong sensation. There is a triumph of the senses over the meaning. If you give a human brain an environment where actions don't have consequences, if you give that brain an environment that is just literal, where there is no significance, might it not be the case that that brain stays in a infantilized state? And when I talk to parents and people individually, I've yet to meet someone who's disagreed with me. Everyone seems to feel a kind of uneasy fear and a poorly articulated worry that they can't really put into words, but nonetheless they feel there's something that needs to be done.
Susan Greenfield esindab kõige äärmuslikumat vaadet, kuid kogu Suurbritannias tuntakse rahutust, et lapsed võivad osata elada suureks sirgunult vaid online-elu. Et peale kasvab veebist ära rikutud põlvkond.
I have friends and family who are struggling with their children over new technologies. Even the most technologically savvy amongst them find it strange that their kids are more comfortable in front of the screen than they are. Now, I happen to visit many of the same sites that their kids are on, and while I've got used to them, I do still feel a bit like a tourist. I'm constantly amazed at what Generation Web can do with new technology. And so I'm going to go find out what living with Generation Web is really like.
Järgnev on kogu riigi vanematele nii tuttav stseen, et ei vajagi sissejuhatust.
Their lives are completely centered around their computers.
I chat to friends and do comments and stuff.
Usually Facebooks and Hotmail and stuff.
The kids come home and are on Facebook while they're having their first cup of tea.
You can communicate with people and you can look into their lives and stuff.
When I was young, we didn't even have a home telephone.
Can you imagine life without the web?
No.
No? I think it would be like removing her arm if you took her Facebook site away from her.
What do you think life was like before the web?
Really boring. Yeah.
What do you think people did?
Read books.
By the time Generation Web reach adulthood, they'll have spent 10,000 hours online, and a huge proportion of those will have been spent on online social networks.
Nüüd on võimalik 8 miljonilt inimeselt kogutud andmete põhjal esimest korda televisioonis näidata, kui tugevalt on Suurbritannia elanikkond interneti sotsiaalvõrgustik orbiidile kinnistunud. Nende veebiplaneetide suurus näitab külastuste hulka igas kuus. Siin on Bebo varastele teismelistele, MySpace muusikaarmastajatele, kuid kõige suurem on Facebook. Facebooki enda andmetel on nende konto avanud kogu maailmas 350 miljonit inimest. Kui see oleks riik, oleks rahvaarvult Hiina ja India järel 3. kohal. Facebook on sedavõrd domineeriv, et sellest on saanud lapsevanemate ängistuse peamine objekt.
People my age, mid-40s and up, are wringing their hands right over what kids are doing, teens are doing on Facebook. As if we would not have done those things had Facebook existed when we were young.
How dare these children now not suffer the way I did? They should be having the kind of life I did, made to read, made to do this. They should not have this freedom, this access. Or if they do, while I can approve of it, I ought to suggest that it's dangerous, that it's going to go wrong.
Facebooki kriitikute peamine argument seisneb selles, et see muudab sõpruse mõttetuks. See omakorda õõnestab ühiskonda, sest sõpruse silt käib sama hästi eluaegsete semude kui ka hulgisidemete kohta võhivõõrastega. Kas see vastab tõele? Et sellest selgusele jõuda, on vaja mõista, miks Facebook nii populaarseks sai.
On the 24th of May, 2007, just 10 days after his 23rd birthday, Mark Zuckerberg shuffled into this hall and explained the secret of Facebook's triumphant success.
Today, together, we're going to start a movement. At Facebook, we're pushing to make the world a more open place.
Zuckerbergi eesmärk oli muuta Facebook paigaks, kus võtta ühendust sõpradega ja vahetada informatsioone, tekste, fotosid või teateid seltsielu kohta. Pruugib vaid end registreerida, luua profiil, leida endale sõpru ja saada neilt nõusolek hakata teie Facebooki sõpradeks. Nii loob iga Facebooki kasutaja suurema võrgustiku raames omaenda sõprade ringi.
You'll see that what we're building is a massive network of real connections between people through which information can flow more efficiently than it really ever has in the past. And it's changing the way the world works.
Kuid et muuta maailma toimimise viisi või veidi küünilisemalt väljendudes kasvatada turupotentsiaali, peab Facebook ligi meelitama tohutul hulgal kasutajaid. Facebook püüab saavutada seda, mida nimetatakse võrguefektiks. Selle mõiste võttis 100 aastat tagasi kasutusele Ameerika telefonitööstur Theodore Vail.
This is the essence of what Theodore Vail outlined. If you have a telephone, just one, it's pretty useless because you can pick it up, but there's nobody on the other side. There's no one to make a connection with. But if you add another telephone, add another, and another, and another, and another. This guy can talk with this guy, who can talk with this guy, who can talk with this guy, and so on and so on. The more phones you have connected, the more benefits for the individual users, because the user has more possibilities of people to connect with. And the more people that they can connect with, the more other people will want to join. The system becomes self-sustaining and self-fulfilling. It's as simple as that.
Nii tõuseb ka Facebooki mõju ja väärtus sedamööda, mida rohkem sõpru see ühendab.
Many of these things are a sort of scale leads to scale. That is, if your friends are on it, you go on it. You don't do some objective evaluation of this one is better in this way and that one's better in that way. You know, it's like, why is the phone, you know, with its dial, why did that catch on? Well, critical mass eventually becomes the very big thing. You know, for a while, Facebook forced you to be friends with somebody if they wanted to be friends with you. And that, you know, that didn't happen to work for me because I was getting 10,000 friends requests a day.
People have the experience of having thousands of friends. Right? Well, no one really has thousands of friends. It's either the word thousands or the word friends has to be struck out for that sentence to make any sense.
Me oleme näinud, et Facebook vajab mahtu, kuid probleem on selles, et kuhjatavaks kaubaks on inimsuhted. Mida see suhetele tähendab? Mida tähendab, et teil on 10 000 sõpra? Kas Facebooki sõber on sama tühine, odav ja käigu pealt minema visatav nagu kiirtoit? Või polegi ta midagi enamat kui burger?
Seriously, in 2009, a well-known fast food chain created a page on Facebook that offered the chance of a free Whopper for people who defriended 10 of their Facebook friends. In less than 2 weeks, the love of a Whopper proved stronger than 233,906 friendships.
See jultunud turundustrikk näib üllatuslikult paljastavat midagi huvitavat meie Facebooki sõprade väärtuse kohta.
The underlying issue was, you're on here, we're all on this Facebook, we all love it, it's fun, great, but like, what's the point?
Steve Schiff oli üks tuhandetest Facebooki kasutajatest, kes otsustas oma online-sõbrad maha müüa grillitud lihatüki eest kukli vahel.
How do you choose which to get rid of first?
To be honest with you, it was incredibly easy. Okay. I mean, it was not that tough to find 10 people that I really didn't need to have that online connection with. This isn't something that's happening in real life, so let's just cut to the chase, let's cut our losses, let's go get our free burgers, and everybody wins.
Kui me oleme valmis sõpradest burgeri hinnaga loobuma, kas see tähendab siis, et sotsiaalvõrgustikud on muutnud 21. sajandi sõpruse olemust? Või on inimeste sõprusel muutumatuid omadusi, mida Facebook ei saa ära rikkuda? Alex Kratoski soovib suhete evolutsioonist rohkem teada saada ning kohtub maailma juhtiva asjatundjaga primaatide rühmade alal Oxfordi professori Robin Dunbariga.
Can you talk me through what's going on here? What's the social life of a primate group about?
It's all about social bonding, personalized relationships between individuals. Primates live in a really intensely social world. They spend a lot of time grooming each other. That sort of gives them this sense of bonding. The problem with grooming is it's a one-on-one activity. It just sets an upper limit on the size of groups in the end. So the most social species really only have average group sizes around 50 to 60 in primates.
1992. aastal tuli Dunbar välja valemiga, mille põhjal määrab grupi suuruse ülempiiri sidemete hulk, mida meiesugused primaadid võivad omada. See osutus nii usaldusväärseks, et sai tuntuks Dunbari arvuna.
We sort of plugged human brain sizes into the same equation, and it gives this number of 150. And sure enough, that turns up all over the place in human communities. It turns up in the military. It turns up in average village sizes in the Doomsday Book, 1087 AD. It turns up in hunter-gatherer communities.
Mida tähendab siis Dunbari arv homointerneetikuse Facebooki põlvkonna puhul? Kas Facebook on suutnud looduse seatud sõprussidemete ülempiiri muuta? Kui Facebooki alal kodus sotsioloogid analüüsisid kõiki aktiivseid võrgustikke, avastasid nad siiski, et loodus kehtestab end ka internetis. Tegelikkus on selline, et keskmise Facebooki liikme sõprade arv jääb tublisti allapoole Dunbari 150 inimese ülempiiri. Õigupoolest on Facebooki sõprade arv, kellega igapäevaselt suheldakse, üllatavalt väike, tüüpiliselt vaid 5-6.
So while you can claim you have this huge network of people you know in some vague sense, most of those relationships I wouldn't call relationships, they're voyeurs.
Seega näitab Dunbari arv, et Facebooki võrguefekti taotlus ei ole meie suhteid muutnud, vaid toimub midagi sügavamat. Jättes kõrvale pealiskaudsete arvude teema, näib Facebook tegevat meie suhetega midagi muud. See hoiab neid digitaalse informatsiooni pidevas silmuses. Et mõista, mida see tähendab, tuleb naasta selle mõiste algupära ja ühe teises maailmasõjas arendamist leidnud teadusharu juurde.
Enemy again and again broke through the coastal defenses.
Night after night, the brave anti-aircraft gunners stood by their posts and tried in vain to shoot down the German bombers. British military scientists realized quickly that they were facing a grave problem.
Õhutõrje kahurväelastel oli see mure, et radarid küll märkasid võõraid lennukeid ja neid tulistati, kuid pihta ei saadud. Dilemmale andis vastuse Ameerika matemaatik Norbert Wiener.
When Wiener heard what was facing the British gunners, he decided to come up with a solution that tackled the problem in a completely different way.
Wiener esitas lihtsa küsimuse. Miks me kõndides ümber ei kuku? Ta väitis, et meid hoiab püsti aiu siseneva sealt väljuva informatsiooni pidev silmus. Mõju ja vastasmõju tsükkel, mis võimaldab meil tulevasi sündmusi ette näha. Wiener ei käsitlenud suurtükiväelast ja suurtükki, lennukit ja pilooti iseseisvate üksustena, vaid osalistena samas pideva tagasiside silmuses. Ainult niiviisi mõeldes, ühendades inimese ja masina üheks süsteemiks, võisid õhutõrjeväelased oma sihtmärke edukalt alla tulistada. Üks Facebooki suuri uuendusi on sellesama mõju ja vastasmõju seose ülekandmine sõprusele.
In fact, I believe that they are key in understanding how our online relationships have transformed forever.
Facebook oli kõigi teiste seas esimene staatuse värskendamise alal reaalajas, milles sõbrad saavad kohe teada. Ent algus oli sootuks teissugune. 2004. aastal oli see vaid kolledži tudengite lihtne veebileht.
Legend has it that one night after a bad date, Mark came back and hacked into the student databases to create a website for rating all of the women on campus. 2 hours later, 80% of the student population had voted, crashing the entire student computer servers.
Mark was the type of person who was always, thinking of technical solutions to social problems.
Sidemete ja suhtlemise jaoks otse kui loodud, alustad Zuckerberg uue seikluse Facebookiga.
I built the first version of Facebook in a couple of weeks in my dorm room at Harvard, and I built it just because I wanted the people around me, the students at Harvard, to be able to share information with each other and stay connected a little bit better. I emailed a few of my friends, and they emailed a few of their friends, and within a few days, I think thousands of people were on it at Harvard.
Kõik need suuremalt osalt tudengid, kes osalesid kolledži ühiskondlikus elus, ihkasid kuulda oma sõprade kohta uudiseid ja kuulujutte. Kuid Zuckerberg mõistis, et kuigi veeb on teinud informatsiooni kättesaadavaks, pole alati teada, et see olemas on.
The problem was, browsing Facebook was like poking your head into somebody's room every time you wanted to find out what they were doing. You had to go to your friends' pages every day, or you missed something crucial that they posted. And if you missed something crucial, then you didn't respond. And if you didn't respond, then your friend thought nobody was watching. And what's the point in bragging if nobody cares?
Let's get fired up!
Olukorra muutis pöördeliselt Zuckerbergi järgmine samm. Ta viis infosilmuse lõpule sellega, mida ta nimetas uudiste vooks. See tähendab, et kõik, mida te oma lehele postitasite, levis koheselt ka kõigile sõpradele ja vastupidi. Nad ei pidanud enam teiste kodulehele minema, vaid kõik värskendused tulid ise nende juurde.
We launched the product at midnight. We were convinced that people were going to love it. And we thought, this is the kind of thing that could change the web.
Praegu näib see enesestmõistetav. Kuid tolle aja Facebooki kasutajad vihkasid seda, nähes selles vastikut tungimist oma eraellu, väärakad kõrvalekallet Facebookist, millega nad harjunud olid.
First thing I saw on the top was that someone had broken up with someone. And so when I saw those things, I was really just put into shock. It's like, that's so much stuff broadcasting. And then I realized that all of my stuff was being broadcast the same way too. And I don't know if I didn't really want that.
As soon as we launched the product, we started looking at the feedback coming in from our users, and it was universally bad. It was, I want my homepage back, I don't like this, please turn it off. I was emailed by almost everybody I knew on Facebook to say, why did you do this to us? It was personal. And right before we were leaving, I think we were called and told that there were security guards coming because there was going to be a protest outside. This was hours after we had launched it.
I decided to make a protest against it and created a group called Students Against Facebook Newsfeed. By the third or fourth day at its apex, it was at 750,000 people in the group.
Kuid Zuckerberg jäi endale kindlaks. Ta oli otsustanud, et Facebooki kasutajad peavad elama oma elu infosilmuses.
Within a few days, we could see in our stats already that just the amount of page views that people were doing and the amount of engagement that they had in the site was going up, because what they were coming to the site to do was see what their friends were doing on a day-to-day basis, and this just made it so much easier to do that. Mitte sõprade arv, vaid reaalajas värskenduste kultuur tõi meie suhetesse suure nihke. Staatuse pidev uuendamine ehk elu online silmuses lohistas veebi uude ajastusse ning sahvatles paljusid, eelkõige Twitterit, Facebooki jäljendama. Kuid veelgi tähtsam on see, mida see nihe meile kõigile igapäevaelus tähendab. Alex Krotowski läheb kohtuma Sherry Töökliga, tunnustatud psühholoogiga, kes on uurinud meie suhteid tehnoloogiaga juba 20 aastat. Nüüd on ta koondanud tähelepanu veebi tagasiside silmuste mõjule meie eneseteadvusele.
I think you've started to get almost a new personality type. It moves from, I have a feeling, I want to make a call, to, I want to have a feeling, I need to make a call. There's a sense in which you almost need the validation and the support of the community to in fact feel the feeling in the first place. Bringing other people into the loop of feeling your feeling. This is very seductive.
So as a recipient of all of this information, how do you think this is affecting me?
You start to want to hide. I cannot live the BlackBerry version of my life. I cannot read, know all of the places and spaces and feelings and the Facebook and my life is more than I can live. We're no longer nourished but consumed in some way by what we've created.
I genuinely believe that we co-evolve with our tools, and most of our networked tools are, our smartphones where we can check emails, desktop computers, laptops. They encourage us, because it's so convenient, to consume lots of information in little snippets.
We recently crossed the 1 billion view mark per day that we're serving. And we're also receiving close to 24 hours of video every minute on the site, which is a phenomenal amount of data.
In my life, it's increasingly rare that I have time of my own. Time to think. I have a Twitter account and several blogs to maintain, plus my Facebook status updates, my photo diary, my video blogs, and my podcast that I have to record. And that's the content that I create. There's also the content that I consume, not least of which are the emails that are at my inbox and all the messages on my answering machine. I was away for a week, and I had 283 emails that I had to go through.
Elades infosilmuses näib homo internetikus tõusvas infomeres aegamisi ära uppuvat. Kuid internetiajastuga kaasneb üks veelgi sügavam muutus. Veebiarhitektuur näib julgustavad meie ajude kasutamist täiesti uuel viisil, et kogu rohket informatsiooni kuidagi seedida. Siin Massachusettsi Tehnoloogia Instituudis Bostonis kujunes 60 aastat tagasi ühel teadlasel tulevikust üsna ebatavaline visioon, et tehnoloogia ja meelemõistus võivad koostööd teha. Vannevar Bush oli osaline paljudes 20. sajandi teaduslikes läbimurretes, alates maailma esimeste arvutite ehitamisest kuni tuumapommi väljaarendamiseni. 1945. aastal avaldas ta artikli, mis kuulutas ette meie digiajastut, nagu me võime mõelda.
This is Bush's original article, and with great insight, he described all of today's problems with information overload.
Ta keskendus samadele probleemidele, millega Alex Klotowski neis arhiivides maadleb.
I'm searching through all these files associated with Bush. And they're labeled Vannevar Bush, A through B, C through D, photographs, correspondence, etc. But the irony is, this isn't how Bush thought our brains worked. For example, when he thought about his Aunt Susie, he didn't think about all of the people that he knew whose names began with S. He thought about where he was when he last saw her, how she did her hair, what she smelled like, how she held her fingers in front of her when she talked, that kind of thing, and so on until he built up a picture of her. In other words, he didn't think our minds were linear. He thought they worked through association.
Bush put on the table the problem. He said, here is the scientist. Imagine our scientist. He has before him the human record. In other words, all the things which science has decided in its collective wisdom are true. How is he going to manage to work effectively with the knowledge which includes all that stuff?
Bush uskus, et töötades assotsiatiivsel meetodil avaneb inimkonna teadmiste varamu meile kõigile ja meie meeled vabanevad lineaarse mõtlemise piirangutest. Ligi pool sajandit hiljem sai seesama kontseptsioon informatsiooni linkimisest aluseks Tim Berners-Lee andmeedastussüsteemile, mida ta nimetas üleilmseks võrguks, veebiks.
The brain's good at doing those things, first just finding those coincidences and then building on them to find the patterns.
Berners-Lee ehitas veebikavatisse sisse niinimetatud hüperlingid, võimaluse sidestada üks informatsioonikild teisega. Kuid küsimus on selles, kas hüperlingitud assotsiatiivne mõtlemine on meile hea. kui peegeldada aju toimimisviise ja võimaldada ühe hiireklõpsuga ühelt teemalt teisele hüpata, kas me ei muutu siis laisaks ja kergesti hälbivaks?
I think science shows us that our brain wants to be distracted. And what the web does, by bombarding us with stimuli and with information, it really plays to that aspect of our brain. It keeps our brain hopping and jumping and unable to concentrate.
The internet simply reflects who we are. So our inability to concentrate, our focus on real time, the fact that we're obsessed one week with Michael Jackson, the next week with Twitter, the week after with terrorism, simply reflects that inability to concentrate.
When you grow up expecting to be able to find information at a moment's notice, what does it do to your ability to internalize information?
Varem õpetati meid pikalt lugema ja kirjutama. Nüüdsel veebi assotsiatiivsete linkide varal üles kasvanud põlvkonnal näib olevat raske säärase karmi lineaarse mõtlemisega toime tulla ning see tuleb esile isegi tippülikoolides.
What I notice about students from the first day I see them when they arrive at university is that they ask nervously, what do we have to read? And when they're told the first thing they have to read is a book, they all now groan, which they didn't used to do 5 or 10 years ago. And you say, why are you groaning? And they say, it's a book. How long is it?
Just take your own doctor. Would you be happy if your doctor simply skimmed the abstracts of Lancet and all the major databases and never read anything in detail? How happy would you be?
I still think that books are at the heart of what it means to be educated and to try and educate. And I think that the generation of students that I teach see books as peripheral.
I happen to think that long-form reading is very important because you can learn things from long-form that you could never learn from short-form. You can't read Remains of the Day and not come away with a better understanding of life regret. And those are things that you can only get in sort of book-length reading sessions.
Kuid kas see pole üksnes vanema põlvkonna nurin? Kas anekdootide kõrval leidub ka tõendeid, et veeb meie mõttelaadi tõepoolest muudab? Professor David Nicholas Londoni ülikooli kolledžist on esimene akadeemik, kes asus inimeste internetikäitumist süstemaatiliselt uurima, analüüsides miljoneid anonüümseid andmeid. Ühes uurimuses on ta leidnud, et 40% kasutajatest ei lähe samale veebilehele kunagi tagasi ning nad vaatavad tuhandetest saadaolevatest vaid kuni 3 samateemalist saiti.
The really big surprise was that people seemed to be skipping over the virtual landscape. They were popping in from sites, looking at 1 or 2 pages, going to another site, looking at 1 or 2 pages, and then going on. Nobody seemed to be staying anywhere for very long.
Professor David Nicholas's study suggests that the web's hyperlinked network of information is converting us from thinking linearly into thinking associatively.
Nende 2 mõtlemisviisi kandjaid võib kujutada rebase ja siilina.
Foxes are people that embrace all kinds of ideas, like the wisdom of the crowd, bounce from here and there and pick things up, and that's how they acquire their knowledge. And then there are hedgehogs. Hedgehogs like one big idea. They repeat, they go back to the same source. These people like the peer-evaluated environment because they're certain of that. And these people represent quite a different group of people.
Alex Krotoski soovib teada saada, kas noorem põlvkond on rohkem rebase või siilitõugu ja ühendab jõud Londoni ülikooli kolledžiga ainulaadseks eksperimendiks. Eesmärk on selgusele jõuda, milline on veebi mõju meie ajule.
Is this test a genuine first?
Absolute first, a global first. Nobody's ever done this before. Nobody even knows what's going to come out of it.
Et saada esimesi vihjeid on kokku toodud 100 inimest, kes esindavad erinevat vanust ja sugu. Ühed kasutavad veebi harva, teised kogu aeg.
Look at your screen, concentrate what you have to do, click start, and that game will begin.
erilist huvi pakuvad 12 kuni 18-aastaste vanuserühmad, kuna nende aju on välja kujunenud ainuüksi veebielu tundes. Kuidas erineb nende käitumine võrreldes inimestega, kes kasutavad internetti harva ja regulaarsete kasutajatega nagu Alex Krotoski?
You've got to look at the pictures, you've got to look at the numbers, you've got to look at the letters, you've got to make a decision. Is it an odd number? Is it an even number? Is it a vowel? Is it a consonant? It's a bit too much for my brain.
100 vabatahtliku uurimise esialgsed tulemused näisid kinnitavad seda, mida paljud kahtlustasid. Veebipõlvkonda paistis iseloomustavat rohkem rebaselaadne käitumine. Võrreldes vanematega vastasid nad küsimustele üksnes pärast poolte veebilehtede vaatamist ja kulutasid informatsiooni uurimisele vaid 1/6 teiste kasutatud ajast. Olgu see hea või halb, kuid on päris selge, et veeb on noorema põlvkonna ümber kujundanud. Facebooki tagasiside silmused on toonud nende suhtumisse nihke. Nüüd leidub empiirilisi tõendeid selle kohta, et informatsiooni ülekoormus ja assotsiatiivne mõtlemine võib tõesti meelelaadi muuta. Paljudele näib perspektiiv üsna sünge, kui noorte elu möödub vaid mõttetus mööduvas virtuaalmaailmas kapates. Kuid kas me pole liiga karmid? Kas me kipume koos pesuveega välja viskama ka uue kultuuri lapsukest?
We go on singing the old song of fragmentation and alienation because every society always looks at the preceding age while living in a new current one, never sees the age it's living in.
You might be surprised to learn that was recorded in the 1960s, and the person who was speaking was the Canadian maverick thinker Marshall McLuhan.
1968. aastal võttis Marshall McLuhan aastaks vastu professori koha New Yorgis. See naistele igati sobilik paik, sest talle pakkus erilist huvi moodsa elu sigin ja sagin. Ta aimas juba siis rõõmuga ette tulevikku, mida veeb on meile nüüd toonud.
McLuhan thought that the coming of the electronic age would speed up the movement of information, injecting new life into the mundane mechanical era. He thought that the rules, the regulations, the beliefs of the 19th century would be overturned as we were forced to dance to the faster rhythm of the electronic information loop.
In the 1960s, he told a story of how, in the future, we'll all be connected in real time, and our messages will just sort of flow as if we were sitting next to each other. You know, as if we were right there. And that's just a profound thing to say in 1968.
Alex Krotoski läheb külastama veebiettevõtjat Jonah Berrettit, kes usub, et McLuhani unistused saavad nüüd tõeks homo internetikuses. Ent võltsitud videod kassidest ja klipid tantsivatest meestest annavad tegelikult tunnistust keerulisest toimivast interaktiivsest kultuurist.
McLuhan realized that people always judge new media by the standards of old media. So in this case, you see that the internet is all about the social relationships and the network, but people still judge it as if it was static content. And so you look at it and say, oh, this is a silly cat video, and judge it as content, instead of saying, oh, this was something that one person created in their garage, that 3 other people collaborated on and added to, that was now being used to satirize a political campaign, and that it's part of a web of creativity and a network of sharing that is actually more interesting and important than the media itself.
I think a lot of people would look at so much of what goes on online, you know, the memes, the silliness, the kittens that are stuffed inside glass vases and all these kinds of things that literally get sent around everywhere as a distraction, as a bit of a waste of time, as actually not particularly worthwhile. But at the same time, you're seeing it as something that has a sophistication, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you think about things that are a waste of time, think about the average sitcom, right? Or the average Hollywood movie. You know, you sit there passively. There's not really much to do except just passively consume this media that's for the lowest common denominator. When you look at viral culture, what you see is people much more engaged. So you mentioned kittens and glasses. The Bonsai Kitten project was a fake site that made it look like instructions for how to make bonsai kittens, where you put them in jars and they get funny shapes and you can make your very own. It was a total prank. And the person who created it launched it by telling a bunch of animal rights activists about it and said, "You'll love this." Of course, he knew that they would freak out and hate it and send it all around. But then as a consumer, when you see that, you have to go through a sophisticated thought process where you say, it's a joke, I think it's funny and I like it and I'm going to send it to people. Or it's a joke and I think it's still offensive and I'm going to fight it and organize. And it breaks people into different groups of how they feel about it, and they can react and interact with the media and become part of the story, where the people are actually powering the media that's spreading around and changing and evolving. Once you figure out some of the principles of how things spread online, how do you make something that when people see it, they want to share it or pass it along or bring more people in, it can work for silly things or for serious things.
Noorte näivalt pealiskaudsel kultuuril veebis võib olla ka tõsine pool ja reaalsele maailmale otsene mõju. Üheks kõige eredamaks näiteks on see, kuidas veebipõlvkond on taas leidnud huvi poliitika vastu.
What is required of us now is a new era of responsibility. A recognition on the part of every American that we have duties to ourselves, our nation, and the world.
I made the decision in February of 2007, pretty early on, to take a leave from Facebook and go and work full-time for the Obama campaign. The campaign from the start was really interested in running a bottoms-up grassroots initiative, which happened to intersect directly with everything that was happening online in 2006, 2007, 2008.
Barack Obama!
YouTube'i, Facebooki, MySpace'i ja Twitteri noortel kasutajatel oli kampaanias keskne roll.
We had members of Congress on Twitter. We had protesters organizing through Twitter outside. We had the president on Twitter using it to campaign. And we had everyone in the country, well, not everyone, but a lot of folks across the country using Twitter to express their opinions on the hot topics. So we sort of had like the entire spectrum.
Valimisaastal oli Obamal 3 miljonit Facebooki sõpra. Uurimused on näidanud, et kolmandik kõigist alla 30-aastastest kasutasid oma poliitilise meelsuse väljendamiseks sotsiaalvõrgustikke. 4 aastat varem oli nende arv tühine. 2/3 vaatasid internetis poliitilisi videoid, veerand saatis neid edasi või miksis materjali ümber.
What we were able to do was figure out how people could do it their way, and that there was a really just a groundswell of energy and enthusiasm, both in terms of fundraising but also in terms of time spent volunteering for the campaign.
America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there's so much more to do.
Election night in Chicago was something I think anybody who was there will have to say will never happen again.
It was indescribable. I mean, it was a really important moment for the country above everything else. We were all just so emboldened by the fact that not only had we done it, but we'd done it differently. And that made everything all the more powerful.
Veebitehnoloogia koos tagasisidesilmuste ja assotsiatiivsete sidemetega näib olevat meelitanud noored poliitika juurde sellisel määral, mida pole paljude varasemate põlvkondade puhul täheldatud. Olgu see hea või halb, kuid nagu oleme näinud, rakendavad noored kogu maailmas veebiväe oma ürituse teenistusse. Alates Iraani ülestõusust kuni noorte Vene häkkeriteni, kes väidavad olevat vallandanud Eesti vastu kübersõja. Nad tunnistavad veebiväge inimesi ühendada ja koostööd teha. Paljude meelest on see positiivne areng. Veebikuru Steven Johnson usub, et koostöö ehk tarkuse koondumine, mida veeb nüüd võimaldab, ongi inimkonna progressi liikuma panev jõud.
One of the things about ideas that's so interesting is we have this myth that they come to people in a kind of eureka moment where somebody's sitting in their study and suddenly they think, aha, I understand gravity, or I understand how to build a nuclear reactor. But in fact, what tends to happen much more than we realize is that ideas are much more collaborative. If you look at the history of invention, what you find is that inventions are dramatically disproportionately centered in urban areas. One of the great things about cities is they're filled with these public spaces like a coffee shop where people come together who might have some shared interests but come from different backgrounds. They work for different companies, or they are artists meeting writers or filmmakers. And in that kind of point of convergence, they sit around and they talk and they share ideas, and it becomes a kind of connective space. So the web is, in some sense, this kind of virtual version of what cities have historically done. You have people connected in a way that was never possible before, and part of it is this basic kind of principle built into the architecture of the web. The web is, at its core, a platform for linking things.
When you look at a city with its teeming masses of people, each of whom have their own dreams, desires, and expectations, it shouldn't work, but it does. So could it be that the essence of what makes a city truly great, the gossip, the connections, the serendipity, could also work on the web?
Alex Grotowski usub, et parimal juhul võib veeb olla nagu põnev innovatiivne metropool, mis tuleb lõpuks ka nooremale põlvkonnale kasuks. Varem nägime, et mõned inimesed kardavad veebisõltuvust, nagu see on maad võtnud maailma kõige internetiseeritumas riigis Lõuna-Koreas. Kuid pahupoolega käib kaasas ka varjatud kasu. Lõuna-Korea ülekoormatud digitaalmaailmas üles kasvanud noored troonivad sageli ka maailma haridusedetabelite tipus.
그냥 표현을 지금 소유가 다 나와. 그러니까 우리가 지금 궁금한 거는 뭐야? 뭐를 낳는? 새끼를 낳는?
Alex Grotowski kohtub Korea riikliku infoühiskonna agentuuri presidendiga, kes väidab, et Korea laste tublid saavutused ei tulene üksnes suurepärasest haridussüsteemist, vaid ka sellest, et nad on harjunud varasest east saadik veebis üksteist vastastikku täiendama ja koos tegutsema.
Korea is now leading country in terms of mathematics and science and other areas. I think it is influenced by this kind of environment of the high penetration of internet.
This generation is growing up with the web. It's growing up with it as part of their education system. What hopes and what expectations do you have for the world when they grow up?
They will be more intelligent compared with us. So
I look forward to that.
It is more, because they now recognize the importance of communication and helping each other for solving some problem. Collective intelligence is now basic to their instinct. I hope it is helpful for some evolution of mankind in the world.
Every kid starts with an incredible amount of curiosity. Why are some materials strong? Why are some materials weak? Well, I asked that when I was a kid. Nobody could answer. Now, my son will get the answers and want to ask more questions. So I think it's a huge change.
이거는 안 구체조, 우리 눈체조를 해주는 거래요.
Human civilization as a whole is now witnessing the connection of people everywhere on Earth through this web in ways that actually do mimic the growth of a human brain. And the analogy is imperfect, but it's also real. We are seeing the emergence of a global brain.
Selles filmide sarjas oleme näinud, kui tähtis on uurida veebi mõju meie kõigi elule. Veeb näib andvat meile kõigile hääle ja ühiskonda ühtlustavat. Kuid virtuaalse revolutsiooni praegune tsükkel sigitab ka megatootemarke, mis meid jälitavad ja müütavad, ning valitsusi, mis võivad ajusid pesta ja nuhkida, nagu ei kunagi varem.
The way in which small groups of elites dominate in cultural, political and economic terms. It reflects our values, our narcissism, our views, our obsessions.
Isegi kui veeb avab enneolematud uued võimalused, kaalub selle alla meie kujutlusvõime piiratus, kasumi ja võimuiha. Veeb on inimloomuse peegeldus koos kõige selle hea ja halvaga. Kuid selles filmis oleme näinud, et noorem põlvkond üksnes ei peegeldu veebis, vaid võib koos sellega ka areneda.
My hope is that the web will eventually show us new horizons, liberate humanity, and change human nature for the better.
All this great stuff that's emerging in social media is people trying to find new, interesting ways to communicate, become more efficient, become more engaged, become more informed. And I think it leads ultimately to having more empathy.
The web isn't going to, solve disease or solve poverty, but what it does is it makes it so that people can share information more effectively and know what's going on out there, right? And when people are better informed, then people can make better decisions.
Hopefully social change happens gently. The sort of thing which the internet brings by connecting people is openness and understanding of other people's ideas on a good day. So I hope we have a lot of those good days.
We have the knowledge of the ages gathered for us to browse in our pockets. And if we seriously think that's a bad thing, if we seriously think that's something we should turn our backs on or sniff at, then we really deserve a slapping. This is astounding technology, and we should just take a moment to celebrate the power and the reach that it gives us across time and across ideas and across continents, both past, future and present, to connect with people.
Vahest on selle revolutsiooni puhul kõige hämmastavam, et kõik need tohutud muutused on teoks saanud vaid 20 aastaga. See ei ole veel lõpp. See on pelgalt algus.